if anyone on here wants to go and apply for government grants throughout the world kind of thing, at least the foundation is an authorized authority to say, yeah, when we say that you're an instructor or you're a black belt in agentic engineering, we have a little bit of weight behind us. And so the last point in that is, I think, talking like what you're mentioning with Jason and others is there a certificate that you can say that you're a black belt or whatever color belt in agentic engineering? So you're officially recognized by the Agentics Foundation that you're at this top tier or whatever tier you are. So it's definitely something that love to. I think we have to kind of light a fire under our butts and get on it a little bit more. There's a lot of people creating the courses and there's a lot of discussion. So it's kind of that scatterbrain approach right now, and we're almost ready to get formalized to actually have a certification. Because, like you said, if we're kind of the leaders and we're pushing the development, the ethics, the security, the safety best practices, well, someone has to have a certification program, and it makes sense that we are.
Yep, awesome. Just regarding the new community website, have the email addresses been ported over from the
Yeah.
previous site?
So we're right now, people are registering, and you just register from scratch. We're working on ways to get everyone to come over. But if you're on the existing site, if you're a subscriber, myself and Nick are adding you to make sure that your subscription continues. So we're doing that. But right now, it's log on to the new site, start from scratch. We're meeting with the Disco, which is the platform people, about how do we migrate the other 2,500 people over. So we're working on it, but the easiest way is if you want to go to the agentics.org, it brings you to our new community site. You register and sign up. That's the easiest way, and then we're going to be backfilling all the people that haven't registered.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, welcome everyone. We have I'm the substitute teacher today. Ruben's traveling, so it's not going to be quite the vibe coding that you're used to. I'm going through. I'll go through a process, but I guess before we get started, I know I'm not sure if you would like to say something, Timu. You have some amazing news. Not to put you on the spot, and if anyone else wants to say something, and then later on we'll also have some stuff. No.
Hello everyone, and just good news from the Finland and the Finnish agentic community. Last week we had a really successful event, and the house was full and 3 times overbooked, and many people watching on the stream. But after the streaming and the event, the people were like crazy that what's next, and how can we participate and so forth. And so we put up a WhatsApp group for the Finnish in Finnish, so that is a lower barrier to discuss. And the first day it got 350 participants, and we only had one group, so that was full with different kind of topics and discussions. And we decided that if it's going to be this successful this fast, we really need to do this as a community. Likewise is the global community also. So we did a WhatsApp community for the Agentics Finland, and a couple of days, and it's 750 users. Everyone, top CEOs, professors, keynote speakers, public sector decision makers. We were aiming at the level of head of IT, CTOs, decision makers who can help organizations to get into the agentic engineering and utilize AI well. And I can say we need to be humble, but I can say that the first week with this Finnish chapter has been both very interesting discussions, and the finding the willingness of the participants, how they want to alter and do something good in the society to help all the public sector and the organizations to find momentum in utilizing AI. And the last thing that I'd like to say, that we are differentiating ourselves from the vibe coding society, so we are elaborating the agentic engineering. I'd like to thank at the moment everyone on the call for the help earlier. And by the way, Iiro on the call is one of the participants who was also in the meeting, and nice to see Finnish people also on this call too. But yeah, it was great, and there's a lot of momentum ongoing now in Finland, but probably all around the world.
Oh, incredible. Yeah, I can't believe the traffic growth in such a short period of time. It's a hotbed of some smart people over there.
Yeah. It's Mikko Lasaro, I think it's a big name in Finland, and I think at least he also is helping the growth.
Oh, awesome. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share now, or we can um, we can go, we can interrupt it along the way. Um, so yeah, if there's any news or anything, feel free to interrupt. I'll
Yeah, I
just
can
do
carry
a
on
presentation
that
here.
what I shared yesterday, Brad, where we speaking of certifications, one of the things that we are wanting to do is get people roles and jobs, right? So I'll just read this post, but I won't tell you his name because I've reached out to him to kind of highlight him on the website and set up maybe a conversation, but he really wants to, he's inundated with the new job, so he wants to kind of figure that out first. So in respect of that, I'll redact his name and the company, but I'll read the post. He said, excited to announce that I've joined company as an Agentic Engineering Lead. I'm thrilled to take on this new challenge and contribute to company's mission of modernizing the enterprise. This role represents an incredible opportunity to work on innovative projects and explore the jagged frontier in agentic engineering. And I'm looking forward to working with the talented team. Thank you who have supported my journey, in particular, Ruben Cohen, for ongoing inspiration and building incredible tools in the whole Agentic Foundation crew. There you
That's
go.
awesome.
Yeah.
And
So I didn't ask him if that title existed before he talked to the company, but I'm curious of how they landed on Agentic Engineering Lead as a title. But there you go. That's
yeah.
our
Just to add something to Matt, and then we'll let you carry on, Brad. In my discussion with Jason, we were talking about sort of the roles that might be as or analogous to on some level, and he brought up the forward deployed engineer role. And Brad, I think you sort of mentioned this at the one of the first Toronto meetups, where you were talking about how you're literally just sitting with a stakeholder who's has a vision in his head of what they're trying to build, and you're building alongside them, and that's sort of the role of a forward deployed engineer. So I think agentic engineer is one classification or naming convention, but I also think forward deployed agentic engineer is almost more relevant to this group in particular.
absolutely.
No, absolutely. And yeah, and just a recap for everyone with regard to the foundation, some of our priorities right now. We finally just got not just got, but through a lot of help with Matt, Nick, all kinds of different people on in our group, have our community site. So we've updated from our old website to a new website that is more learning centric and research centric. So just sent out emails to people. If you can come on board, register, and there's a couple of courses right there now where that people can do, and we're going to be providing more and more courses for different levels of subscribers and active members, making sure that they have access to some of the leading edge stuff. So we're just migrating and creating the courses now with the goal that once we have a couple of courses, we're going to go through and really focus on, there's a big need, and we were talking about this just before the meeting, where we need some kind of formal recognition. And there's people working in London, like Mondweep, Bents, and others, and a lot of people trying to figure out how do we become more of an authority where we have courses and certificates to have available for people. So we're working through that process right now. I won't bog us down with the details, but there's been a lot of hard work being done, and it is something that we're seeing demand. And I think we're now the largest Agentics for sure organization, the largest not-for-profit, and we're expanding pretty rapidly. So I have a personally, I feel almost obligated that we have this we have this community. So now it's the time to become a little bit more formalized. So thanks to everyone that's been helping out. And enough of me talking. I'll get on with the office hours. As I mentioned before, my style is a little bit different than Ruve, so I'm not going to do vibe coding. I'm not that fast. I'm not uh, that fast. What I'm going to go through is my process for more of the agentic engineering. So I think top line, everyone seems to have a different idea. If you have a better description, pipe up. But I look at vibe coding as you're playing. So even if you're brand new and you've never done coding before, to a lot of people in this group, vibe coding is you're going down a rabbit hole and you're just creating stuff. I do a lot of teaching, and I use a company called lovable.dev. Used to be GPT engineer for playing around with the front end. I like to see things. I'm a visual learner, so I like to see things before I go deeper. This process that I'm going through is I already know what I want. Right now, just to give you some context, I'm going through my final classes at school, and I have to do a capstone project. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at creating gold standard for documentation. So being able to have agents that take messy user feedback, take all the crappy stuff, to be honest with you. If it's I'm recording a call with a client and taking a transcript and putting it in, I want to take all that and create what I consider gold standard. That's what I'm doing for a capstone project. What I'm doing on the personal side, and I'm going to try and push the boundaries for it, is I actually want to go through, and I have a more of a neuro-symbolic language uh, that I'm working with to essentially almost take the documentation and turn it into more of a proof-based programming. So where you have gold standard documentation that's been validated even to the point of mathematical proof if you can. And then from there, essentially software design becomes create the gold standard document, and it's essentially put the Lego pieces together. Or and with my mental image is, rather than building the Lego, which is the code, you're actually just creating the instruction manual that comes with the box of Lego. If you can create the instruction box with all the Lego pieces and you know they fit together perfectly, then that documentation now becomes gold standard or proof-based documentation. And to go from that to actually building the Lego set, you can give to any child that's between the ages of 8 and 80, and they can actually build it. So that's my long-term vision. Um, so where I'm focusing now and what I'll go through is, one thing that I find for documentation is it is the key if you're doing agentic engineering. Everything else is, you create the documentation, everything else is correcting mistakes or creating the better agents to follow the documentation. But in my view, I spend between 50, sometimes 70% of the time when I create stuff, creating the documentation. And then if I have good documentation, it makes it really easy to go through to actually create any kind of software tool. So some call it the boring stuff. I call it the money maker, because it's the stuff that takes all your time. And if you mess up on the documentation, there's absolutely no chance you can actually vibe code your way into making something good. You have to essentially backtrack, hit the redo button on git commits a whole bunch of times and start from scratch, or you have to do refactoring, which I can't stand refactoring because it's a pain in the butt for me. So I'm going to go through here. I haven't played around with CLI agents or agents that are um, natural language based for a little while, so I might struggle through here. I've been working with the more symbolic agents, but I'm going to go through and show how I create documentation. This is the first one that I've done. So just to bring some context, when I go through for golden docs, I've identified really as much as you might want to have 50 or 100 documents, and you can see my stuff gets messy. I have to clean it up. I I really found you only need three, and these are the three that I'm focusing on. Uh, if your projects are a little bit more complex, you may have a couple of others, but what I find is these three are the main ones. So the first one is a philosophy document, philosophy and architecture. I like to use the I like to use metaphors and analogies. So this is the soul. So this is the whole reason of being. So why are you even creating the software? This is I found a very abstract, and I just kind of went down a couple of different rabbit holes, and they all came to the same place. But the soul or that constitution, whatever term you want to have, I haven't really seen it very often, but it really, really does help, especially if you're doing agentic-based programming. And just as a slight tangent, when you're doing this, I actually now include the soul in all of my agents. And what I'm finding is near 100% needle in haystack retrieval when I have soul, that they don't drift. Because that's one of my problems with using very symbolic languages is you get drift because it's not natural. It's not natural for an LLM to follow a symbolic language. The process is absolutely, that's the process of symbolic languages is absolutely how LLMs follow, and they're naturally, um, with very little hints, they follow a natural process, but the actual syntax they forget. Where if you add a soul and the purpose, I'm finding that the drift is very minimal. You'll still have it, but it's very minimal. So the first document, and this is the one that I want to create today, is the philosophy, or I like to call the soul. Second one is SAD or specifications document. There's other terms that use out there, but I look at it, it's the technical specifications in your design. So it's kind of, you've got the reason why you're in being, and then this is the blueprint of what you actually create. Some people, a lot of people actually break this out into multiple documents, 5, 10, 15 different documents that all have different components of this. I'm a, I'm a, the way that I program is I like small because my brain can understand small. I can understand 3 major documents. I can't understand 20. And I generally, when I do agentic coding, I only do things that I know how to code myself. And it's just, I get the agents to do my work for me. And the last one that I find is the implementation plan. So it's not the detailed step-by-step phases that's when you're actually implementing, but to have your plan of what steps are you doing when, how are you doing it, how do you monitor, what are you going through. So really what this is the master implementation. How are you actually doing it? So quick summary, I'll go a little bit faster, but this is the core. So it's why are you doing something, what are you doing, and then how are you doing it. All these other documents is ad hoc as needed. Generally, I do them based on a feature set, or when I'm creating GitHub epics or something through my agents, these get done on the fly, or for that specific feature for that specific module. But sometimes I find you might need these other documents like your data architecture, API, endpoints, any kind of integration protocol. So this would be more your API, quality and validation frameworks, and you have others that are ad hoc based on the client needs. So this is the golden docs that I want to use, and I was just playing around just before the call for this first one that I want to have, which is Soul. I know I'm breaking the rule of Claude code of more than 500 lines, but um, it seems. Oh, actually, I didn't break it. It's only 250 lines. But this is my first attempt on what the first pillar is, the reason why you're going through. So to start, I just started up Claude Code, dangerously skip permissions, and then now I'm just going to what I like to call ground information. And as Jed mentions, the 500 lines might have been something that was state of the art back in the day, and it's now more of a guideline rather than a rule. So I'm going through, usually when I start a new session like I just started now, just start a Claude, you do the installation process, dangerously skip permissions because I don't like to click yes, yes, yes all the time. And then I typically start by grounding. I always like to go through, I haven't really touched this for a while, but I like to update my Claude MD file. So this is your master file with the master instructions. It essentially tells Claude everything that it needs to know within this .claude file. I leveraged a lot of what Roof did in Claude Flow for this. It's just I've tailored it to my own coding style. Um, so quickly, what I've done is I've created my own more elaborate or bigger picture agents, and I'll show that in just a second. And I did leverage a couple other sections. What I'm working on today is the golden documents here. So I'm going to go through my agents and really just execute something here. So
just a quick one, Brad. What changes did you make to Claude.md in this particular case? Like, what would be the things that you look for in the out-of-the-box Claude.md file?
yeah, take a look. What I normally do is I actually just ground. I make a copy of the original. So whatever I found to start with, usually make a copy. Then I do grounding. So I say go through, research my .claude file to understand what's going on. A lot of the time I have specific documents and guides, such as in here, I have a developer cheat sheet. So this provides all the more specialized things that I do, how I want to be done. So I first say send the agents to identify and research what's in this file to get it into the context memory. And then I say based on the structure of the existing backup copy of Claude, update with my information. Now, I know Jed and other people are more sophisticated, so they might have better comments. That's just the way I do it. So it looks like, yeah, Jed uses personas, which I love personas. And then there's other repos, but that's the way I do it. Is I just I do grounding first, and then say update Claude yourself based on these files.
Brad, is this part of your Barforge repo?
Yeah, this is just my repo. It's just my working version right now. I just have to finish a couple of courses, and I'll be taking all the agents that I have and open sourcing them. I just haven't got around to it. So the Barforge is just my working repo. It's really messy, so it's not something that I would share with people. Create a swarm of 3 agents running in parallel to evaluate the So I'm just going to say which file. So I'll just type and then I can explain. So what I did was create a swarm of 3 agents. I forgot to tell it, but hopefully through the Claude MD, it knows to go through my agents to identify which ones are going to analyze. And then what I'm saying is take a look at this folder. There's only 2 documents. What the main thing is to update the one that I have for pillar 1, which is the sole document. So it's going through, let's see which agents are going through. I don't see them running in parallel here, but hopefully they will soon. So what it's pulling is my favorite agent, which is my brutal honest agent. And while it's going through, this is what I'll be open sourcing. This one I actually did open source. I can provide a link. But this I like to give personas to my agents again for grounding. That if you ground and give it an idea, it actually seems to carry all the way through. It knows the personality and the purpose, or again, why things need to be done. So in this case, the one main agent that's being called that I can see is the brutal honest agent. So this is one that is going through and it you're giving it its tasks, giving it the constraints, and the persona is Dr. House. It's just a fun name, easy for me to remember, and it goes through and knows, okay, don't believe any false claims, never put false claims in there. Anything that you do, make sure you validate. And I think it says who its friends are. So these are just all the different criteria on how you go through. So get the evidence, um, claim the test analysis, how to test, and then this is the key one, the documentation versus reality. And this is an older version, but you can write this in pure prose. You don't have to write it in code or anything like that. And then one tip that I found that for all my teaching classes that I always do is create a rubric. So in this case, rather than just saying, yeah, it's good, because a Claude especially lies. And if you've ever worked with the biggest one that thinks it does better than it should is Google Pro. It will always say that you got an A plus or whatever factor. So if you're asking any AI, especially if something's saved in memory, I'm finding, what, it'll always give you the mum effect where something's not as good as it should be, but mom will always say, hey, you know what, you're doing well, keep going, I'm encouraging you. If you create something called it like a rubric, if you remember back in elementary school, or if your kids are in elementary school, they get rubrics explicitly say here's the different categories and here's a score to use. So I find this rubric approach really helps with grounding and making sure rubrics are still a thing. Jed, I use them all the time. Every one of the classes that I teach.
It's been very long since I was that old.
Yeah. Well, I'm old enough that we actually didn't use rubrics when I went to school. It's a term that I learned from my kids. But if you have a rubric, it has points on what it needs. And depending on the agent that you're doing, the more complex you can have for the rubric. So rather than just scoring itself, it's going through, and this is taking forever. I don't know why it's taking so long, but you go through and it should be bringing his friends. So you got the brutal honest, which is the assessor, and then I only have a few other agents. If I need to create an agent, I have this one, which actually it gives instructions on how to create an agent. So it goes through, I think this one is called Professor X from X-Men. So that's the soul or the reason why. And then you go through and where's my guides for the gold standard? So it goes through, you have an agent creator, and then when I want to create a new agent, it goes through this. I've evaluated it through Dr. House. He validated it CLI only. Took me a whole bunch of iterations, but I again like to spend a lot of time on documentation, making sure that I get documentation right. It still lies. It's not 95% out of 100, but you know what? It's better than my first approach. In all reality, when I manually went through, I would score maybe a 20%. And without the Dr. House, it was saying, yeah, this is production ready. So it's like, Claude just lies all the time. So I like to iterate and go through this rubric process. So this really gives tasks. This one was a little bit focused when I wrote the CLI, a little bit code heavy for Python, but I do find that Claude Code and a lot of the other ones do like to have code. They understand code quite well. So if I ever want to create a new agent, that's how I do it, is I create my gold standard agent, which I consider perfect, heavily manually authored to make sure human in the loop is there. So everything that's on there, I understand and I agree to. Once I have a gold standard agent, then the next step is now create a template. So I want to create a template on here's how to create other gold standard. Again, I do heavy human in the loop at that stage as well. I now you and then from there, once I have one as a one template and one that's already been done, now it makes it easy that I can just have the agents create themselves. So for time to create these agents took me about 5 hours to create the first agent, about 2 hours to create a template, and then the other 20 took me about 15 minutes, and they created themselves. And the same thing when I use the neurosymbolic agents, same kind of process. But now I have existing agents that are creating other ones, so you get what's called a flywheel effect that the next time through, rather than spending 5 hours to create that gold standard, it took me an hour to do. And then to create all the neurosymbolic language agents, really it was a matter of click a button, and while Claude would take its time, for some reason it's not going in parallel here. That's why it's taking a little bit of time.
Is that gold standard agents open source, Brad?
I will provide it, yeah. My goal right now, the only one I have on a repo is the Dr. House, just because it was one that I presented. It's almost like a month ago. But
Yeah.
these other ones I'm doing, I just have a little bit of day job stuff to do in the next couple of days, and then I'm getting back and I'll be posting all of them. So it says it's doing in parallel, but I don't actually see it running in parallel. If I was doing this not live with the demo gods, I would cancel and restart. But in this case, I'm just going hope it works.
In terms of running in parallel, I find I have to explicitly tell it to launch multiple sub-agents simultaneously. Claude Code appears to be resisting running multiple agents simultaneously using batch tool, and I think this is an attempt by Anthropic, speculating. It's an attempt by Anthropic to reduce token consumption on the max plans.
That makes a lot of sense, because this exact prompt is what I've used 100 other times, and I just haven't used it as much, just saying spawn 3 agents in parallel. Sometimes I say batch agents, but it goes through. So while I go through, I can just show for some of the other agents what I have. So I have, I keep trying to find the directory. I do have these different agents, so they're all specialized, and my finding was if you have a gold standard document on how to create agents, it makes it really easy for these agents to create sub-agents on the fly. So if you have something that is a front-end specialist, so here's my front-end expert, I guess it's called Jarvis. It goes through, it's grounded, core mission. So it has kind of different tones, which actually might seem flaky, but it actually does work if you ground it. And then talking about what it actually does. But what I find is as you go through, here's all the different patterns that it would check to make sure it's okay, how to save stuff into memory, the performance matrix, and then somewhere down the line I have how to create its own sub-agents. So my approach is you have these I call them gold standard agents, and then they actually call and create their own agents on the fly based on the gold standard documents. So rather than me having 100 or 400 or whatever number of agents, I keep to these 20, and then if they need to, they'll spawn their own sub agents on the fly. So lesson learned: when I present, I double check that Claude is not nasty and going through.
Brad, did you create the initial agent by hand, or the gold standard agent?
By hand is a relative term.
Yeah.
I said create one based on verbal diarrhea, to be honest. I was like, these are things that I want to see. So the way that I did it, I said, here's what I want, and then I just iterate through. Once I have one agent, in the past, one agent was good enough that it could help me create something. And then once I had a couple of agents, even in horrible format, those agents actually provided um, the better code. And then once I have better code, then it's kind of a recursive process. I had the agents go through and look at themselves and improve themselves. Oh. Uh, Another tip is if you ask Claude to create shortcuts, I have one that when I type in CC, it means Claude code, dangerously skip permissions. Do you have any other tips here, Jed, to make sure it runs in parallel? Said using batch tool doesn't work.
Batch tool sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. The first thing I do is I don't try to edit the prompt in that field because scrolling back and forth without being able to click to the specific token or character I need to change is a pain. So I usually open an empty file or a blank file into which I'll write and edit the prompt and then copy and paste the prompt into Claude Code. So the biggest thing here that from what I'm seeing, spawn agents in parallel simultaneously, so they run concurrently using the available MCP spot. You know what? Let me just type that all in.
Why would you not just have a file and have numbers in it? So you have a list of everything you have told it, and then just tell it to execute the fifth line or the sixth line or the seventh line, so that you've got a record. And if you need to repeat the whole process, is a file that you can check it.
Yeah, yes. So I find for memory systems, two different things. One is memory, like you said, it's perfect for most of the time. So it'll remember what you're doing. I do have like Roof had a full memory system
But
in
that's
here.
it remembering things. I'm thinking more like, rather than in the interaction CLI, typing your instruction there. In your instruction, you just say refer to file and
Yeah,
execute line 5.
yeah. So you saw I just copied the path.
And actually, sorry, I wasn't watching where you copied the path.
Oh, so you go in here if I want to include say this document, I just go to copy path.
Yeah, but I'm saying, okay, so show me again what you. So I understand you do that, but you're still writing the instruction in the command line, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Well,
I was saying, don't put the instruction in the command line. The only thing to write in the command line, say execute the fifth line of my.
oh, if you have the full plan, I don't. I'm creating the plan right now. So yeah. If you have a plan, so if you're doing an implementation plan, the way that I do coding is I have my agents. They actually I have a GitHub agent. I should have a GitHub agent. Implementation plan agent somewhere. Oh, Epic Planner. So Gandalf, I didn't create all this stuff, but what this agent does is it gives it some information, but the way that I do when I'm doing implementation is read through everything and actually create a GitHub epic or GitHub issue. So it's connecting through GitHub CLI to actually go through. I have a proper gold standard on how to create an issue or an epic, and it'll go through, analyze the instructions, and post it onto GitHub as step one. And then step 2 is I use a separate swarm of agents to go and actually solve the feature set or the issue you have on GitHub. So I do a 2-step process. I just for me, I can't click go and have Claude Code run for an hour by itself. It always messes up on me. So I have these stop breaks where you have human in the loop, and I find the GitHub one is very good. Going back to the memory and remembering what you have. So that's if you do the step. I find the memory works except for if you want to validate something. If Claude or any other system has written the test, I find it very difficult. It can't actually correct it and run its own test. It will lie to you and or not lie, but it thinks it ran the test where a lot of the times it hasn't. So some of the tips find is open up a new terminal, and when you want to run tests, run them separately. I think Jed and others use MCP. I use GitHub to be able to have it as a separate thing, so it's not in memory. So when it's evaluating a test, it's not looking back on something that it's already written. So this tip that Jed had got the agents to run in Swarm. Yeah, so you use the CLI for GitHub as well, not the MCP too.
Yeah, the CLI is well established, and most importantly, when you put the wrong command, it instructs you to use help or offers solutions, which the LLM is usually able to follow off of, versus the MCP, which, in my experience, does not do that.
So there's some questions about how I created. So what I did was thanks Jed. To create the agent is I had really the soul, so the reason of being for a brutal honest assessor. So I had that foundation, very high level. This is what I want to do, is create a foundational level assessment. So I created this one first. I went through, asked Claude to, based on the requirements of Claude Code, get grounded. So understand what my purpose and the reason why I want to have an agent, and also what is the capabilities of Claude Code, including any kind of memory systems, any kind of hooks, any kind of guides, MCP, but get the grounding. Then from there, as I went back and forth and did testing, I said, okay, based on this, create an agent. So it created one that wasn't very good, but you know what? It was better than no agent. Step 2 was, based on this not very good agent, create a template for all the other agents. So that's where I created the template. I think it's in here. Gold standard agents. So I created a template for all other agents. Step 3, so this was based on the one agent that I liked, which you can see, the Dr. House principle. It created all the other ones. So here's all things that you should be including. The next step that I did to create all of them is really, now you're starting to get into agents that can create agents that can create agents. Is now that I have one good one, I have the gold standard. Here's the agent creator, was the third file I created, which is your Professor X, and you're based on this gold standard, you can now create other agents. So that's the way that I created all the different agents. And then once you have it done once, now I have a rubric scoring mechanism. I just go through recursively until each agent was at a standard that I understood as a human and also was good enough. And then my last step before I went into what I call production, but it's just my own use, is making sure that these agents actually worked. So if I had a crappy file, run it through, say these agents swarm, create a scorecard of it. If I already knew what the errors were, if it came back with the same errors, you know what, that was a good enough test for me. I didn't have to go any further. So this presentation today was supposed to be all about showing the code, and for some reason my Claude's just not liking me today.
This is really helpful.
Brad, there was a question on the chat from I think Dimitri, who asked about the Claude Code templates, right? So whether did you create these agents by yourself without using Claude Code templates? So I hadn't come across this before, so I'm having a look. So obviously, this website has a load of agents and templates. So did you,
Oh, that's slick. Thanks for bringing that up. I haven't actually looked at this. Yeah, I'll check it out. Have you used it? How do you find the templates? Oh.
Dimitri?
Yes,
Yeah.
I found it very useful because for me it was easier to find the template for my task
Yeah.
and adapt it a bit for my requirements
Oh, that's cool.
instead of creating it from zero.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely going to check that out. Thanks, Dimitri.
I had a look at one of them. Like this seems to be like this is what you are showing, but it's very detailed, lots of information. Like I was looking at the front end developer in this in these templates, they are very high level. So I'm just wondering, like even if you have something as a starter, how would you go about and probably get it to a state where you have been you have? So I'll give you a link on the chat just to you can bring it up on the on your window. But if you, for example, go open this link,
The front end developer.
yeah,
Yeah.
then if you then go down and click on the markdown, so at the bottom of the screen there is a component code section.
Yeah, 28 lines of code.
Yeah, it's very, I think, high level, right? So if,
Yeah.
for example, someone were to just start with this, how would they go about and get it to probably the state that you are in?
So yeah, this is now an opinion of mine. I haven't verified it. It works for me. Is the smaller agents just are not the way that I code. I like dealing with only 20, again, ones that I can understand. So every agent, I fully understand what um, a security expert would do, a front-end developer agent would do. So it's just my brain can only handle so many. So I personally like to have longer agents that are very explicit on what you do. So if the way that I would do is I just brainstorm what is needed for an agent. This is a good template to do. It's just my style. I like to have a lot more information. Maybe that's why it's taking so long here. But I find if I have one such as my front end expert here, it's quite a bit more detailed. So Jarvis goes through and it's just says all the different specializations it has. This I just had Claude create what the specializations were, but I just brainstorm. And once, for me, it was more of a snowball effect. Once I have one, then it made it easier to do more and more. So I find for my style of coding, I like to be explicit, um, such as, oh, here, this is where it's explicit. So rather than just creating agents on the fly, in this case, it's saying here, you're creating an analyzer, an optimizer, an accessibility guardian. So this agent would do is rather than needing these smaller agents to be saved, it creates them on the fly. So it's not a lot of code, but it essentially will create the philosophy about the same. I would go through. So if I was to create from scratch, again, this is the best way to do it. You have a template like this, and then I like to say, this is the way that I code. These are things that I look for. So a front end, I really only use certain programs. Back end, I only use certain things. So as much as I love Laravel, I'm not going to put Laravel or PHP in a back end development agent because I don't use that anymore. I love it, wish I could use it, but it's not something that I use anymore. So to create the agents, I just keep going through iteratively back and forth. And then when you do have one or two that look good, you just have them improve themselves. So to create the CLI agents, I had them go through. In some cases, they recursively improve themselves once. Sometimes it took 5 or 6 times to get it to a state. And then I'm a big human in the loop fan for this kind of stuff because I'm focusing on documentation. So that's the way that I create the agents. And the good thing is once I had those, then I can create more of my specialty agents. So when we go through, Okay, it's not really updated. It's not using the neural symbolic here.
How would you know if it was?
Because yeah, neural symbolic is it's all weird symbols.
And you do that just so it reduces the number of tokens.
Oh. I'm working on this. Okay, here. Yeah, this is my neural symbolic. So my neural symbolic is actually made for AI. It's not made for it's human readable to a point if you know what you're talking about. It's kind of like if you program, it's like writing in the language C or even Python. Python's not English. So
Yeah,
it,
I
it's
see.
it's
Okay.
a it's
Yeah,
a
this is
hybrid
symbolic, yeah.
between, and this is one where I'm really focusing a lot of my research right now is this neural symbolic to become an abstraction layer between human understanding and machine learning. So it follows the machine processes, and when I write documentation, it's explicitly written for AI, and it's written to include proof-based coding. It's included for the personas to include all the stuff for agent coordination. So it's more, I just found the symbolic is one token saving, but it's more reducing ambiguity. I can't
Yeah,
get
you
any
in
language to, I
fact
mean,
you
human
said
can,
it
yeah.
how I would have said it the second time. Symbolic. What confused me was when you called it neurosymbolic. It's like,
Oh,
is that something different? It's like, no, it's a symbolic language. Okay, that's
yeah, no, it's just to make me sound smart. Yeah, no, it's just a symbolic language that I just found for again my way of coding. That this is the way that I'm creating documents.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I probably have the worst demo ever created because for some reason I can't get Claude to actually create anything for me.
So also, Brad, you're using Claude only here, right? Claude Code, not Claude Flow at the moment.
So I took Claude Code as the base, and then I took the learnings from what Ruve created in Claude Flow, and adapted it for my own style. So
I see.
uh, just I like the longer agents and then because I'm a documentation first person. I like a process where it creates the document, so there's a human in the loop to review documents before I go into the next step. So rather than I'm not someone that I can't do what Ruve or Jed or Ocean do, where you click a button and Claude Code will run for an hour, except for today. I'm one where you know I go through and create an epic, and it has one task, and then I like to review it to make sure, and then go from an epic to implement your epic. So I've taken a lot of the learnings from what Claude Flow does, but I've adapted it to myself. So I've created my own agents. Memory system is fairly similar to what Roof did. One of the big things that I'm looking at is templates. So similar to what Dimitri was talking about, where rather than creating something from scratch, I have this gold standard, in this case, like a agent template, which is supposed to be gold standard. And to create new agents, you just review the template and you're just essentially changing the wording. So and I'm focusing on that style of coding. So rather than creating even say a website, I'm not saying create a chatbot from scratch. I'm saying here's the different components that are already what I consider gold standard on being able to connect to an LLM. Here's another one, how to create the component for the prompt area. So here's all the different templates that I know are perfect. Take the template rather than starting from scratch, just modify the template. So that's more my coding style, which is again quite different than a lot of people in the community, but it's just the way that works for me.
So I would assume that there are a bunch of people who would prefer to operate the same way as you do, and therefore a function of the foundation might be to help you find those other people so that progressively, you can build up that approach between you. So it's not, you're benefiting from the community.
Yeah, and yeah, I do quite a bit of teaching. I'm creating a course right now on documentation first for programmers. So it's just my style is always I like to push the boundaries for myself, but I always try and um, work through something to what makes sense. And typically, if I merge what I really want to do, the ambitious side, and how I would explain it as a teacher. Somewhere in the middle is actually the best practice, is what I found. So that's where even creating these documents, which was supposed to be, we're supposed to create all 3 documents today and can't even get one working. But
But
that's
these
where
are schools of
I
thought,
find.
aren't they? This is your school of thought, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
And you've pretty much said that Ruth has a different school of thought, and I'm sure that there's markedly a third, because as soon as there's 2 of
Yeah.
it, there's often n. So what I'm really saying is, maybe we can find those little sub communities that want to work on the schools of thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I admittedly I'm not as advanced as Ruve or Jed and others. I'm a straightforward. I've done 25 years of coding. I'm finishing off masters and teaching it. I have a certain way, and I'm old enough that I can't really change. I have to know what the agents are doing. I can't just blindly trust. So
That's
I,
great. That's your school of thought. It's
yeah.
cool.
So
mean,
it's the way I do it, and this is my technique. We're getting to the end, but just in I guess big picture, the way that I do it is documentation. I don't like 20 docs. I like 3, which is your philosophy, which I like to call soul. I find the grounding is incredible if you include that, and you can get as theatrical or false claims as you want. It actually does help. And then um, the next one is so that's your why. Then you get into your traditional what you want to do, which is your technical and specs, and then your how, which is am I in the right thing? Oh, I'm in the wrong one. So why, how, or why, what, and how. And very rarely I'll have research documents, but very rarely do I want the code to go through these. Again, I'm working on symbolic languages, so as much as my agents are very long here, like 800 lines of code, when I convert it into symbolic language, still working on it now, it gets down to about 200 or 300 lines, so it's pretty condensed. And my style is a lot of very precise and descriptive agents. Again, it's just a different way of coding. It's the way that I know how to do, and it just works for me. But
Brad,
I encourage you to look at others.
you have your pillar 1 document and this initial research document, right? But you talk about 3 core documents in your initial research document.
Yeah.
The output that you're generating, was it to create the other 2 pillars, or
Well, the first thing I was doing is I just wanted to go through and improve this document. This was my first stab of doing this right before the call. What I created this document just before the call, and everything worked perfectly, but demo gods didn't agree with me. And what I wanted to do was it's good, but it's not great. So rather than just having it good, I wanted to go through and have the agents improve on this to get it to a gold standard. And the reason why is this is, in my opinion, the reason why the Constitution, the soul, is by far the most important document that I need. So I need this to be 100% gold standard, whatever terminology, theatrical term you want to use. I need it to be there. And that's what we were supposed to do in the call is upgrade this to gold standard, and then the what and the how.
I see. So you're doing the refinement of pillar 1 right now, and then
Yeah.
you would move on to the 7 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a do once in a crappy way, do a second or third time recursively until it's a great way.
Cool.
Hey, Brad, are you tweaking your Claude.md yourself, or are you just letting it naturally, organically happen?
Yeah, I just I take every tip that Ruve and the rest of you guys have for how to improve Claude MD, and I just put a document there saying here's tips, here's what I have in my agent set as grounding, and then say have at it and create update the Claude code by yourself kind of thing. And then I do human in the loop. I double check to make sure the links all work, but I find that works for me. So the Claude code ends up being fairly straightforward. It's basic instructions with very prescriptive that if you need to use agents, this is the folder and here's the exact agents to use. But it won't, I find it works generally fast that it won't actually read those files unless you need to.
And
Do
then
you have a good way?
are are you like spinning up swarms, or are you just doing everything sort of just serially?
Usually, in my agents, the soul of it is they know how big of a swarm size and which ones to do for which tasks. So if I want a normal task is typically three. One is doing research, one is doing validation, one is actually doing the work. And then for more complicated or brainstorming, it'll go up to say 7 different agents for different things that are completely different. And that's where my style is very few agents that are very clear boundaries that it's very rare that you would ever have a back end agent interfering with a front end agent because they're so different. And that's one of the reasons why I kept very few agents is because when I have swarms, they don't copy each other and I don't get those race conditions or conflicts.
Right, right. And then you said that you developed your own memory system. So can you talk a little bit about that?
That one I just took I just kept with what Ruve did and just adapted it for myself. So I just said add different fields when you've learned something. So when you've learned something, and then I had another one that says when we've identified and I confirm that it's gold standard, make sure you put it in memory. So you only look up the gold standard fields rather than looking through my garbage because I do so much iteration that I found memory sometimes didn't work.
You don't want to pollute your memory with your garbage.
Yeah. So it's like,
I get it, dude. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it.
So it's like, yeah, you know what? When you want something good, go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, Dimitri mentioned another thing, PRD. I just I a lot of clients use PRDs and implementation plans and different documents. I find for me those 3 documents I can create anything from them. So if I have to make something client friendly, here's the documents I have. I can put it literally into Claude Desktop or even ChatGPT. Here's the 3 documents I want. And then I don't even use swarms or anything in that. I just manually GPT it and say, you know what, take from these 3 documents, turn it into the client wants a PRD, the client wants whatever timetable, and it just takes that and it's easy to do. If I'm coding, I'll do it with Claude Code.
Yeah, and that's there's a lot of desktop tools, right, that you can use to develop PRDs. I'm a product management guy myself, and I spend a lot of time watching all the developments in the what I call the first mile, which is the PM crafting a spec. And so there's so many tools you can use: Claude Code, Claude Flow, Nexus. You can use all those tools to generate a PRD, or you can actually use Perplexity and OpenAI and all the other tools just on the desktop and web services. And I don't know if you've been following, but there's a new tool that GitHub just released and it's focused around spec-driven development, and their tool is the Spec Kit, right? And they're saying that's we talk a lot here about test-driven development. Well, now finally people have started saying, yeah, the PRD, the spec is really the gold standard thing that you should be spending all your time on at the beginning before you write a line of code. So now there's Spec Kit, right? And Spec Kit's all about spec-driven development and getting your PRD right, getting your spec right, and having everything mapped back to the spec and the PRD as you process and as you build out, and that the PRD is the thing. The spec is the actual thing that you're really curating on and that drives everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's exactly what my capstone project is. I'm trying to do this and well, I'll have to read through this because I might have to change my project now.
You don't need to
I was
read it,
just
Brad.
2 days ago. I think
Text
it
in an
just came
LLM
out
and
2
you
days
ask it
ago.
to summarize. David, are you a practitioner of Spec-Kit?
No, I'm reading as much as I can of it in the last 18 hours, and I really like it because this is the methodology that, as a lifelong product manager, I believe in the value of a PRD, right?
Yeah.
And I believe that something like this I had a shot at building something similar to this, but I think this is definitely the way to go, or very valuable in the world of agentic AI and using agentic AI to build products.
How did you get around the need to pivot or adapt mid-flight in the after the spec is driven or built?
You mean as it starts building, it's using the spec as your...
According to the article on the, or the blog post when GitHub announced it, expects that you know the complete destination, the final picture. It doesn't appear to leave room for course correction or adapting to problems mid-flight. And that's been my experience actually using it. So I'm curious how you course correct without having to start over.
So I actually, for me personally, I'm a super technical product manager. I can write code myself, hand write code like Brad. I've been writing code since I was 12, right? But I'm a product manager. So and what I do is when I define a product, I actually do a ton of research around the architecture and the the infrastructure. And so I'm very brutal in my spec, and I say, I've done all this research, and this is how I want you to do it. I don't leave a lot of leeway to the system to make too many big, broad, sweeping changes. I don't particularly like that, because it gets you in the situation where halfway through your build out, the system diverges off, and now you have to course correct. And course corrections basically result in, if you do that, it results in a completely new spec being built. That means you've got to go back and figure out how different and how much you've diverged from the original. And either you're old school and you want to control that, or you're modern and you say, just go for it. And however you're diverging off, just accept it. So it comes down to that methodology. Either you live by the sword, you die by the sword, man. You accept it and you let it go, or you say no and you go back and you rework the spec, man. It's a lot of manual product management work to figure it out. There's no.
So it sounds like it's the special. You're leaning on the specifications, and you're saying that the specifications are right and those are the guardrails.
Yes.
But it also feels very waterfallish, because because if they're, as what Jed said, what happens if you need to course correct, make any changes, and you're leaning on the gospel of that specification, then how?
So what I tend to do, like I said, I do a lot of research up front. Like, for example, I'll give you right. So say there's a key value data store, and it has to and there's like 3 different key value stores that it's going to use, and I'll do all that research up front. And then when the build process comes to this phase, it'll say, yeah, I want to use this alternative key value store that your research never covered. I don't want to get into that situation, right? I want to know that I did enough really good research to know which was the best key value store, which was the highest performing one, the lowest memory resource, the most global. I want to know. I want to do that research up front. It takes more time.
Hypothetical situation, David. In the course of your research, a key value store, let's say SQLite versus Redis versus PG Vector, some other technology, you settle on one. You realize in the course of building, the realized performance does not match the spec performance. Then what?
So then I guess I'll take the information I get back, right? And I'll be like, shit, I missed something. I absolutely missed this. And then you make a decision like, okay, yes, let's go with that and let's rewrite the spec. But you got, like Brad said, you got to have the human in the loop. The product manager is the decision-making point. Either you be the person, you be the decision-making point, or you let the system let the agentic system just make the decision for you and let it go. For me personally, I don't like to make every decision, but I like to try to figure out what the big impactful ones are before I get started. Because there's so many decisions that have to be made.
Would that then be B2, maybe?
Yeah. So like I have this rule, and it's a kind of a weird rule, but for me it works. I end up doing, like, when I get to version 12 of my PRD, I know that I've done enough work. And I know that my spec is mature. Before version 12, and it's just a weird number that for me, over the last 2 decades, if I get to version 12, I know I'm good, right? But anything before version 12 is kind of fair game.
And I wasn't talking about just the spec. I was also mentioning what Jet talked about, V2, meaning of the architecture. So if you need to change, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I don't like to see very big changes in my architecture once I commit to the build.
So,
that's
question then.
painful.
If I
If
can
you've
just
got,
jump in really quick, guys, and just
Sure.
just because the demo guides finally came through after the fact.
Awesome.
Of course, after probably the recording ended and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I went through just from that prompt. Again, I don't believe any of this. It's even though I have my brutal assessor, I don't believe this until like David, I need to put human eyeballs on this to actually verify. But you can see it initially said that the first wave was what I normally get, which is not very good, 31 out of 100. Don't know what that means. There's a rubric to say, and then I think it overestimated, but it said, you know what, it went from 31 to 95 based on all the gold standards that I have. In this case, sometimes actually, if I provide enough documentation, the right documentation, it's able to do it. And then this is where we're talking about for the artifacts for the memory system. It created different parts of the memory, and very quickly this is what the document came out to. I haven't gone through it, but it's been analyzed, saying what's been done. Here's the common names, and it's really just saying that these are the different systems which you need. So what is actually required. Then from this, I would actually go through. I'm not sure if this even works. Yeah, I don't know if it worked, but oh, here, this makes more sense. The others were just validations for being able to do something, but this is more how do you actually create the document. So just wanted to show that something did work in this thing, and if I'd like to talk to David and a few others in the group, because I'm looking at rather than just having here's the spec document, it's how do you create the Lego pieces for a spec document. So if you do have to change on the fly, it's a matter of taking out a Lego piece, putting in a new Lego piece, and making sure nothing else breaks. So how do you have more of like a
Before going
proof-based?
down that particular rabbit hole, my understanding after having a deeper researcher go through, the purpose of having these specs and PRDs is the cost of writing code was tremendous. All the engineer hours that were consumed that SCC draws assumptions off of. Because the cost of writing code has come down precipitously with these LLMs, is writing a fully mature spec still necessary? What I've been doing, and admittedly I haven't properly formalized this, is allowing Claude Code and its multiple invocations to act in a distributed sense. So suppose I'm building a full stack application. I have 3 or 4 different backends that match the same process or rules or that go down different paths that are being built concurrently. And I similarly have maybe 1 or 2 front ends that are being built to experiment with different user experiences that are all interoperable with the different backends being built. So I effectively have multiple swarms of agents that are collaborating with each other, trying to decide independent of me, the human, on the communication protocol or the interface layer, for lack of a better term, between the front end and the back end. And I effectively have a poor man's diffusion model into which or from which an application emerges. Does that all make sense?
Yeah,
So
that's a cool way to use your resources, right? Is you can build like 100 different implementations of the same spec and figure out and have them. If you have the resources to do that, that's a good way to do it, because your cost of building is cheaper, right? Right. I
Or
mean,
the
you can
spec
do it.
evolved with the learnings from what didn't work.
So you're
Yeah.
A/B testing during the build, and then whatever you'll test the output of A/B and whatever the best
It's
result.
multivariate. It's certainly not A/B.
Yeah, it's
Well,
more than AB.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. Just as a descriptor, but yeah,
So a
you
practical example is the stuff I've been experimenting with in the US options market. There are hundreds of trading ideas, different ways to calculate Greeks, different variables that are used, different patterns and data sets, all of which are dimensions against which some algorithmic trading system can be tested. So
Right.
instead of trying to plan all of that ahead of time, I simply set up a sandbox and said, here's the data, here's the output, these are the business rules, that shit cannot be broken. Now optimize for whatever my goal is.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it. I don't know if you still have to spend the time to figure out which one you want to go with, right? If you
I
build,
don't. That's kind of the point. I gave it a goal to optimize toward. There was a VP at Meta, or back then it was called Facebook, who gave a talk at Stanford, and how multiple teams were aligned because of a North Star metric. So it
Right.
didn't require central authority to approve or reject a project. All projects were approved, provided you can justify how it affected or was intended to affect that North Star metric. So taking that same principle and reapplying it here seems to be, it's not consistent, I admit, but seems to allow me to be more productive than having to manually vet and curate a spec, for example.
yeah, I do understand your methodology, and I guess because you believe that you want to you don't want to be in the loop, right? You don't want to give your cycles to be having to figure out which one is the best and look at the spec.
I'm also a bottleneck.
Yes, yeah. Humans are slower, right?
I'm a meat bag compared to these silicon beasts.
Yeah,
You've done
me
this
too.
Monte
I get
Carlo,
it.
right? You've run all these permutations. You
Yeah,
see which
totally.
ones maximize the reward function of,
It's
on
unclear how many of the permutations in the problem space are being tested. I'm not curating this.
Yeah, no, that's right. You're just letting them all run. I think the point though is that
Well, run, that's
there
the
are
point.
pieces in there that
Coverage
are
of the
winning.
problem space.
So again,
I don't know the coverage of the problem space. Yes,
no.
there are multiple instances running, but I don't. So, like, hypothetical mountain range, I don't know if every single coordinate is being tested for a local maximum or local minimum. I assume there's some sort of inferential learning happening so that if there's a slope and there is no peak, it is probably not a maximum or minimum. Search somewhere else.
You should be
And
able to
then
glean the components, i.e. those maybe they all pick the same memory system, right? Should be able to glean those parts that would win in the golden spec, right? If you consider, all right, it ran it 20 different ways, and repeatedly the elements that won were to compile it to a WASM, right? Okay, there's your gem that you've discovered, and then if you were to write from scratch, right, you should be able to derive the golden spec as an outcome of the Monte Carlo run. Does that make sense?
so in that paradigm, if there are multiple in-flight experiments running, if, let's say, a new way was discovered or a new way was invalidated, does that then mean the in-flight runs that are adjacent to that new way should also be stopped?
Well, as you say, it's a question local versus global maxima. So possibly, but you could run it. Depends on the parameters you're trying to run. If you're trying to minimize the overall cost, well, quite possibly, and you could eliminate some runs if you know that they have some bad spec elements to them. You just go, okay, we know that we're never going to accept anything, I don't know, written in C because it's not memory safe or something, right? So whatever the learnings were, yes, you could go and identify the ones that are in flight and kill those. But really, my point was, can we derive the spec elements that would be reliable, so that they become pillars? And of course, it also depends on what is in that set of things selected. So some things will be more compatible with other things that are also selected at the same time.
Yeah.
Jed, do you have all the backends in the same code space, or you need degrees of separation in any way, or how are
I'm
you?
not explicitly separating them, but this environment is capable of spawning child containers, and they are explicitly instructed to only test in child containers instead of in virtual environments. So I assume, although admittedly I'm not verifying this, that there is legitimate separation between runs or between invocations.
So then, Jed, I mean, are you, the question to you is, are you a practitioner of a master spec? And then how detailed is your master spec?
The spec for me is as detailed as Claude Code thinks it needs to be. So for those who are unfamiliar, I published a repo on GitHub for pose detection. And the first prompt was to conduct deep research on the different components needed to build a web browser a browser-based application that can leverage local GPU and local cameras to conduct pose detection on a subject visually. It was able to assemble that spec, that corpus of information, which represented in aggregate probably 40,000 tokens worth of stuff.
Right.
And then I didn't read any of it, to be clear. So I'm not really sure what's in it. I just know that when I validated the output, I was able to look at myself in a web browser running offline and see the overlay was following my movements. It wasn't mocked.
That's
So-
what you were referring to earlier about the how, not the what.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I
Yeah, I guess-
prompt the what I
Or
want, not how to want it.
Yeah. Nice.
And that is definitely one way, a contemporary way to do it. Like for me, as a kind of a lifelong product manager, like I've pre-AI, right? I've just defined and brought to market many products in my career, and I had to manually write a 50-page spec and then sit down in a team of 50 engineers and defend every line of my spec over a full 1 week interrogation. Right, and so I've gone through that pain. Right, that's how it
The
happens.
distinction, David, is those engineers were way more expensive.
Yeah, they were, right, and then
So the cost of being wrong is much higher.
Yes, absolutely, dude. I've spent $10 million over the course of a year building a product that was killed because our assumptions were wrong. And I would have loved to be able to know that in 1 month. But we couldn't code fast enough because we didn't have AI. So I totally get it and I love it. I just haven't got myself and my traditional hardcore product management methodology to a point where I can step out of the loop and fully give an agentic system much more decision-making influence over the spec. I'm just not there yet. I want to be there. And that's why I was kind of excited at this GitHub spec kit.
Focus that energy on defining what the outcome is, because then once you say this is what I want it to, this is what it should accomplish in the end, then you get the benefit of the serendipity and whatever the AI can sort of present to you for options of getting there. Instead, you're sort of trying to think of everything waterfall beforehand and saying, well, I got to think through everything because I've got to defend it. There's no one to defend it to anymore.
I know.
Focus on your outcome, define that as clearly and as specifically as possible, and then let the AI riff on what your options are.
Anybody have any insight on when you have the correct the amount of outcome? Because that seems like that's where the key is in the prompt to getting what the outcome, i.e. Jed, the right description of what it is you want. How do you know when you derived and you got into that proper place?
Yeah, it's it's tough, right? But I do like the outcomes, right? I've had some moments where I'm like, oh, this is the right way to do it. I need to step back and let it have more control and me just describe the outcome, the experience. I have had some moments where I'm curating a new product management methodology where I'm definitely, I realized one of my moments was this, like you said, Michael, I realized that I don't have to defend every line of my PRD spec anymore. I'm not going to be interrogated for a week by 50 engineers. I don't have to be sensitive about the language that I write my PRD in, because a human engineer, 50 human engineers aren't going to be reading it, and I'm not going to piss them off because they say, tell me what you want, don't tell me what the implementation should be. And I realize that now, right? I'm like, oh, this is the outcome and the experience I want for the user and the system, and just do that, right? And so I've had these moments where I'm actually involving my product management methodology. So I'm getting there. As a PM, as an AI and as agentic PM, it's been a very interesting journey we're inventing these new concepts. Someone like Jed who's like, you know what, just you make this, you do 100 iterations, build 100 versions, and let's see which one wins. That's awesome. I love that, but I haven't got myself there yet.
Well, and it also depends on how many people you have to answer to, because I think that, seriously, because, if you have to explain it, because it's not just explaining it to the developers that are going to have to do it, but it's to all these people that are, in theory, spending money on what you're doing, Yeah. So the more bureaucracy exists above you, the more of that you probably have to focus on a waterfall approach, because management wants to know where we're going and how long it's going to take and yada, yada, yada. So I think that's where a lot of these larger, more bureaucratic companies are just going to fall by the wayside, because they carry with them that overhead of explanation and sort of muscle memory of this is how you get a project funded, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. Whereas you look at someone like Jed, who's basically saying, okay, there's this thing that I want to do. Let me shorten the distance between, knowing that I want that thing to be done and getting it done, in multiple ways, trying multiple ways of getting to that point, independent of having to explain it or justify it to anybody, because all I want is the outcome. So so I think what Jed's talking about is sort of the essence of our capability here. The question is, how much do we need to sort of entertain or kind of support the bureaucracy that has historically guided and kind of constrained how we do what we do.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much, so much bureaucracy above, because these people are like writing checks, they're allocating headcount, they're allocating resources, they're like want stuff to be delivered and launched, and you've got program managers and project managers and program and engineers and engineering managers and all the stuff. Like I'm
It's
here in
Conway's
Silicon
Law,
Valley.
right?
Yes. So that's the stuff that I have to deal with. I'm here in Silicon Valley at Salesforce.com doing Agentforce, where we're building out this $10 million system. I can't just say, we're gonna run 13 experiments in the next 48 hours.
But in the end, if you think about all of that effort is spent towards solving a particular problem, and at what point does all of that overhead become a burden to solving that problem, and at what point does a sort of AI first organization come in and say, well, I can solve that problem for you, and I didn't have to have a sales staff or a whole program management yada yada yada. Like here's the solution to the problem.
Right.
In particular, when you start to have delegation of even more of the kind of structure of the organization in Agentics as well, because then you don't have to, there's fewer gatekeepers and more things start to happen. And really when it comes down to it is, how quickly did you get the thing that needed to be done? All of those other sort of justifications and rationales for